Okay, awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to our panel on self-advocacy. My name is Linda Corcoran. I am with the executive team of Disabled in Higher Ed. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a research master's student in Ireland studying food science. So with me today are four awesome people, and we are going to have a fantastic conversation about self-advocacy. So first up, why doesn't everyone introduce yourselves and say where you are in higher ed and in the world currently? So Sarita.
Awesome. So, hi, my name is Sarita Nolan. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm honored to also serve on our executive team for Disabled in Higher Ed. And I'm currently at UC San Diego in the University of California. So, I'm here in La Jolla. And I am currently an undergrad studying psychology with a specialization in human health and applying to PhD programs in prevention science and health policy.
Awesome. Ariana.
Hi, my name is Ariana. My pronouns are she, hers, her. Sorry, I'm having a coffee yet. And oh my goodness, brain fart. Sorry. I got my bachelor's in science and meteorology at Texas A&M University. I am now currently a PhD student at Harvard in Earth and Planetary Sciences with a focus in atmospheric science and dynamics and chemistry and stuff like that.
Awesome. Lisette.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisette Torres Gerald. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska right now. I'm probably the oldest one on this panel, I think. I have a doctorate in higher education with a certificate in social justice and a master's in zoology with a certificate in ecology. I'm currently running a writing center, and that's a whole long story. But I'm a Latina with glasses and short hair, and I'm wearing a black shirt that says ableism is trash.
Awesome. And finally, Stacy.
Okay, yeah. Hi, I'm Stacy. I am currently my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm currently in Vancouver, British Columbia. So I got my undergrad from Dartmouth College in the States in anthropology. I'm now working towards my master's in the School of Kinesiology at UBC. It's a research degree, and then I'm currently applying to counseling psychology PhD programs. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Awesome. So really cool that everyone is here. So excited about it. So I guess to start off, obviously with disability and self-advocacy in grad school, in life, it's nearly essential. So I guess, do you think that self-advocacy is required for people in higher ed to get by or to thrive? And I guess, why did you become a self-advocate? I know that's two questions, but maybe if we can start it off. Sarita, do you want to start?
Sure. So self-advocacy, yes, is like absolutely a requirement for higher ed for me. Like I've only identified as disabled for about 6 years now. So it's been its own journey to really like grieve remembering able-bodied me and knowing that I now have limitations and I need help. So it's like that journey of self-acceptance is really the first step to really self-advocacy. And like self-advocacy, I started when I realized I couldn't write, but then self-advocacy takes on a life of its own when you realize that something is seriously wrong in my institution, and it can't just be me feeling the loss of, like, for example, not having a mentoring program for students with disabilities to get into grad school. It's like I feel like sometimes my university is surprised we're here. So that's why disability in the DEI statement is inequitably executed. So self-advocacy is something that's really required to not just survive higher ed, but to thrive in higher ed.
Awesome. Ariana?
Yeah, so I guess a little bit about me before I answer this question. I've always struggled with mental health my whole life, but I was officially diagnosed about 2.5 years ago. So I was able to cope with my illnesses for a long time until I couldn't anymore. So I'm also in the same boat of like looking at my previous things that I used to do and that things that I can't. And so like learning how to cope with that and like how to navigate that in the middle of my undergrad was really difficult. Yeah, I found that I had to advocate for myself because I realized no one else would advocate for me. And at the beginning, it's lonely because you think you're the only one. But I've come to notice once I've started speaking out and being assertive, not only about myself, but other folks as well in higher ed, I've noticed other people starting conversations and being like, wow, like I didn't realize you could speak out about that. Like I was so scared to do that. And so it's been really, I mean, it's heartbreaking that, you know, we have to do this, but it's also really fulfilling because there's other people out there who often feel like they've been silenced because they feel like they can't speak up for themselves. And so, yeah, it's been essential for me, and especially finding where I need to be in graduate school. Yeah, that's my answer.
Great. Lizette?
I just want to say I love the fact that you guys are recently diagnosed, because I am too. So similar to Sarita, mine, I was diagnosed about 5 years ago after the birth of my son. And I think self-advocacy for me, I think is incredibly important in higher education. I mean, prior to my diagnosis, I also have a mom who's legally blind. So, you know, trying to advocate for her as well. But in terms of my own journey, like I have been given the privilege, I guess, of being able to pass in a lot of circumstances. And so initially, kind of like Sarita, you know, you mourn the ability to do the things that you used to do. And then navigating the new identity, it's like you have to make decisions. And so initially I tried to keep things on the down low. And, you know, so when people would say, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z? I would think about how many spoons do I actually have to give to this? And then, you know, I would make up, you know, some kind of excuse like, oh, you know, I can't do it today because X, Y, and Z. But now being with it and being a part of the National Coalition of Latinxes with Disabilities and just being more vocal, kind of like Ariana was saying. You find people and you come into your own. And I do think, though, that there's a difference between graduate students and life as a faculty or staff member. I think folks are very open to students being advocates for themselves. But when it comes to faculty and staff, I think it's way more challenging. For example, I was challenged in terms of getting accommodations for myself, and to the point where like they didn't have any policies in place for faculty and staff. They had things available for students, but for faculty and staff, there was no policies or practices. So basically, when I asked for accommodations, they had to figure it out on the fly, to the point where they used the Family Medical Leave Act forms as a placeholder for an actual accommodation form. And so that was navigating all of that and fighting to get the ability to work remotely, which is ridiculous, especially now, has been challenging. So just, you know, sadly, I think self-advocacy, the sooner you learn it, the better prepared you'll be when things like this actually happen.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an important point, and we're definitely going to come back to what you're just talking about. But Stacey, do you want to talk about yours?
Yeah. Yeah, so I bring a bit of a different perspective to this panel because I am legally blind and I've been legally blind for my entire life. So it's always something that I've been learning to deal with. I mean, it's something I've been learning to deal with and learning to advocate for myself since I was a young kid. But I think in terms of self-advocacy in higher education, I spent a lot of my undergrad just kind of feeling like I didn't belong in higher education because of the way that I needed to advocate for myself. I think there's this big transition from high school where you have rights and other people fighting for those rights, and then higher education where it becomes on you to vocalize what you need, and sometimes that can be really challenging, especially considering there's a big like learning curve there. Like I don't think I even realized everything that I needed until I kind of had to ask for it or until things started to go poorly. And so that's really unfortunate. But I think one thing that has come out as a theme in all of these responses is like the ability to lean on the community around you in order to advocate for yourself. So I think for me, I was really lucky in that I had a really strong community of people, and even within higher education, I've been very lucky in that I've had incredible mentors in my undergrad, but also now in my graduate studies who really create a space for me in higher education, which like has made me realize that, oh, I can get a master's, I can get a PhD, and like there's room for me in this kind of crazy culture of higher education. And so I think something really powerful about this community, but also your personal community, but also this kind of online community of people with disabilities in higher education is having that group of people to say, okay, this has been done before. What can we learn from past experiences and how can we move forward? And so that's something I'm quite excited about being a part of.
Yeah, so that is it's really great, but also a little bit sad to hear people's stories. And I always use the same words when I'm talking about, I guess, stories I hear from people who are disabled in higher ed, and that is always shocked but not surprised. In that they're always shocking, we always hate to hear them, but nobody is surprised that it's happened because it's happened before and it's probably going to happen again. So I guess just to tell you a little bit about myself, I have both disabilities from birth and I guess I gained disabilities later on in my life as well, but I wasn't actually diagnosed with anything until I was in my teens, mainly due to my parents' ableism and them deciding that they didn't want me to be labeled as disabled, which led me to having massive internalized ableism that I had to work on before I could even go near advocating for myself and getting my accommodations, because there was always this, you're not disabled though. Mm-hmm. And I think that can be a big thing for a lot of people, or even if they do accept disabled, they're like, oh, but I don't want to bother anyone. And like Stacey said, with this whole leap to higher ed of it is all on you and you need to seek these out and you need to know what you need. And even if you go back and you find out what you thought you needed was different from what you actually need, they're all like, but we asked you before.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are you coming back to us again? So I guess, does anyone have experience being like that where they want to talk about it, about looking for accommodations or even just overcoming internalized ableism and how you dealt with it?
I'll start. I actually acquired my disabilities later, but I always had a sister who was physically handicapped with cerebral palsy and epilepsy. It was quite severe. Like the last 14 years of her life, she's been in a subacute unit with tracheotomies, Foley's, feeding tubes, just nothing. And like it's like that internalized ableism like is going am I disabled enough to really call myself disabled? Because it's not visible. Like, as Lizette was saying, I can pass easily. Like, I can just be like, do, my pain is hidden. All the right song is hidden. It's like, yes, perfect ableism, able costume. It feels like an able costume. Like, that, I think that is my biggest struggle. I feel like a fraud as I walk around.
Yes.
Living my truth as a disabled person. Like, I don't look disabled unless I break out the emergency cane when my balance is gone. But otherwise, I struggle a lot with it. And like, I remember my sister, and I'm just like, no, maybe I can't be disabled. But then, like, someone shared with me this article on Black feminist disability framework. Most amazing read ever. Like, I never thought about it because Black people from the beginning of American history have been characterized as strong, as able. We like slave over stuff, and we are the strong Black women. Nothing in the rhetoric of being Black allows for the rhetoric of weakness, of disability. It's like we don't exist. And then within the disability frameworks, you have a lot of white people. And I'm like, do I even belong here? So I end up as a Black woman who's disabled being like, I don't know. Because I see no one celebrating. Like, even at campus, I was in Black Surf Week. I was talking openly about my disability in a group of people. And when like over half of the group of people had walked away, and it was me and another faculty member that was also Black, she's like, I also have fibromyalgia as well. I'm not open about it. Like these hushed tones of like almost being like ashamed and not being able or not even knowing of something called pride in the community of being disabled, like a community that didn't exist. And I think that breaks my heart. I think as I've been looking at disability Twitter, like knowing that there's these IEP programs in high school where you are protected with your accommodations you get, and you get them, then you have to go through self-advocacy in undergrad, then in grad school, crap, the shit hits a fan, it looks like it gets worse. You might be a student, you might be an employee, but who is doing your accommodations? Nobody knows. Then, like, if you somehow surpass your PhD, the barriers get higher, where some schools like mine, like UCSD actually has this disability, like this disability counseling and consulting within the human resources that does faculty and staff accommodations. Like for the Crip Camp event, that will be in the past when people see this, but that's coming up on Tuesday for us, is actually sponsored by them in their office. They're doing all the ASL, they got all the ASL and the captioning for it. I see that support here, but knowing that it's not like a thing everywhere, that's kind of scary. I'm like, okay, so if I somehow make it into grad school, make it to faculty, this is going to get more difficult. And I don't know why there are no bridges to each of those different aspects in higher ed. There's just holes in the pipeline that drop from 26% of disabled people in the population, 19 in undergrad, maybe 8% make it to a master's, maybe 7 make it to PhD, and then like 3.6 in tenured faculty. Like when you talk about affirmative action here in the US, disabled people need it. Like Black people have had it, other races have had it here, but I mean, don't we deserve to be able to have affirmative action, not just in employment, but in employment and in education? Because most employment requires college. So how dare affirmative action just ignore education for disabled people and not be able to track statistics on how many disabled students you have, how many disabled faculty you have, how is the growth going, the decline going, especially if there's a health science campus that I literally started here as a patient at University of California, San Diego, because my healthcare team is amazing. And that's why I chose it. But then they forget me. And I think that's what's broken my heart most. And I'm sorry for going so long.
That's totally okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, to be honest, I think self-advocacy and internalized ableism are so intertwined for a lot of people, and maybe less so for people who grew up or have a disability from birth, but I don't know, because even though I'm kind of in that category, I'm kind of not in that category as well. So does anyone else want to share anything? Okay, Ariana.
Yeah, so my background's kind of, I don't know, I guess interesting. And when I think about talking with other people, so I identify mostly as Latinx, but my father is Latinx and my mother is white. And so being, Latinx on my father's side, but also my mother's side, Texas, the South, very conservative, very religious. And so I grew up in both of those environments, where I've had family struggle with mental health, and it's very hush hush. And so a lot of that, it's like you're a sponge and you kind of just absorb all of that energy and all of like what people have told you, and it just bunches up and bunches up and bunches up until you're so full you don't know what to do. Once, for my situation, I was diagnosed and I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, like what do I do? Like, do I have to live hush hush for the rest of my life? And there's also my Latinx side where mental health and disability is just, it's kind of a taboo. I hate using that word, but that's nodding your head, so I think I'm good here. People just don't acknowledge it, and I don't like going to the doctor, and that's definitely like a Latinx thing as well that I've learned. And it's just, it's a lot. The sponge is really full. And I've kind of had, with therapy and getting treatment and things down the road, which I'm very privileged to have received. I will say that right now, like, it is a privilege, especially in this American healthcare system and with my undergraduate university, that I was able to get treatment. I've kind of had to reteach myself and kind of rewire my brain and kind of whack that sponge against the wall to get things out. And so, yeah, it's a battle. I have good days and bad days. Like, I have that privilege of passing, except on like really bad days where it's pretty obvious. But a lot of people don't know, and like, am I disabled enough, or if I'm not? And I think it was Crystal Vasquez, she runs the Chronically Invisible Twitter account. I was kind of having a little conversation with her, like, I don't know if I consider myself disabled, and we kind of like talked about it, and she's like, no, Ariana, like, you have disabilities too. And so like, whenever she told me that, I was fine, that validation, I was just like, okay, like, let's start working with this. And so that's kind of just my story. And you can't just pray your disability away. That's just not how it works. So it's just, and a lot of it's traumatic too. Like, a lot of our internalized ableism is trauma, and so like coping with that's difficult too. And so, yeah, sorry I talked for a long time, but that's just where I'm coming from in my story. The sponge.
Yeah, that's 100% good, and I think it's a really good analogy.
And may I jump in for seconds as well? Like, I actually dealt with severe mental health conditions from 17, and I never considered myself disabled until the point when it became a physical disability. Like, it kicked me out of higher ed for like 10 years. We may be somewhat similar in age. Like, because Black don't crack. I'm actually 34, so yeah. So essentially, like, being Black, you're hush hush about mental health too. Like, people told mom, like, just kick her out of the house. It's not going to get better. She's going to go spiral down. Like, I was like, I'll throw out my trigger warning and go suicide and cutting. That every day, like, it was either cutting or suicide attempts for 10 years. And I didn't know that actually was a disability. Like for some reason it never clicked because no one ever
Mhm.
was open with me about disabilities. I never knew there was a community, so it just felt like this vacuous hole of being alone. And I think any disability is so much worse when you feel alone.
Yeah.
And by really just whacking that sponge against the wall as hard as you can and like having it shatter and letting everything be free about your disability kind of frees yourself to not feel like you're living some truth for your family, for your culture, whatever is acceptable within that. You don't have to do that. You do you. You do what you need to do for yourself. And you really create a new version of reality that is the reality you need to thrive, survive, and invite others to also thrive. Like, I was having a similar conversation, like you were talking about Ariana with one of my friends that's also Black and disabled. Like, she has POTS. Like, yes, you get to call yourself disabled. You really do. And then I went through like, look, there's a community too. We have support. We have a system-wide like ad hoc committee that I co-chair. We have a community on disability Twitter. You don't have
Yeah.
to be alone. You don't have to hide anymore. And here, we're here. So yeah, sorry for jumping back in.
No, you're fine. I think just like disabled and disability have been seen as nearly taboo words themselves in some cultures, or in most cultures, I think, and definitely higher ed. They're kind of like, unless you have a noticeable disability, they're like, if you were actually disabled, you wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something I guess I get a lot as having learning disabilities as well. It's kind of like, if they were actually disabilities, you wouldn't be at this stage. You would have been filtered out before this, which is just absolutely ridiculous.
Which, like, I find that to be the most, like, that's what frustrates me the most, is because when we start to make those assumptions, then you perpetuate this culture of people with disabilities don't belong here. And like, I think, so I'm a sociologist, like that's the research that I do. I study athletes with disabilities. And like, I'm happy to be having this conversation because like, even just from the work that I do, like these narratives matter. Like the fact that all of you guys are going into higher education and hopefully sharing these narratives and changing the ways that we're thinking about it, that's what matters. And that's what kind of will, in my eyes, I'm blind, so that's funny, but like will start to shift that culture of who belongs in this space of higher education, because people with disabilities should belong there. And the fact that you don't see a lot of people with disabilities is a testament to how challenging it is to navigate this space, and not a reflection on the fact that people with disabilities like aren't qualified or aren't smart enough to be here. In terms of, sorry, I don't think I answered the question at all, but in terms of issues of internalized ableism, like something a transition for me that was quite challenging was when I got a guide dog. So I have quite a bit of vision for someone who has a guide dog, and it's always very interesting to me to think about, okay, if I'm walking around with my friends, I probably won't use any type of mobility device, but when I moved from New Jersey to Vancouver, and I have traveled all over the place, and so when I'm on my own, I typically use my dog. And so that's kind of very challenging, because in one way I can, like, as you guys have all been sharing stories of passing as someone who isn't disabled. So when I'm with my friends and don't have a mobility device, it's very interesting to see how people treat me very differently as opposed to when I have my guide dog. And so that was something that I got smidge right before I left for college. So I was 18, and that was something I had to deal with in college, is like taking on this new identity as someone who's very visibly disabled, as opposed to someone who could kind of pass as being sighted. And so I think that's challenging, and something I've always been like, if I'm privileged enough to be able to walk around with my dog, like, should I have a guide dog? And at the end of the day, it's something I've thought about quite a lot, but something that, like, I know that she has given me so much independence, and there are definitely, like, I would never have had the confidence to pick up and move my life to the west coast of Canada had I not like had a dog that I know is always looking out for me and always picking up on the things that I don't see. And so I guess that's sort of how I've like a little bit of my story. And in terms of being burdensome, sorry, the question is quite broad, so I'm going a bit
I know,
all
I know.
but I've definitely felt burdensome in asking for what I need in college, because you're always trying to fit this like normative understanding of what you should and shouldn't be able to do. And I think that it was really challenging for me to always be asking, and it's exhausting to always be asking and always using your voice and feeling like you're never being heard. And so that was definitely a huge challenge for me in undergrad. But at the end of the day, I always thought of it as, okay, I'm the only one that's suffering here. Like, if I don't ask for what I need, I'm the one that's being that's compromised. It's my education. I'm in control of my own education. So by not asking, I'm really just hurting myself. And that's kind of how I always sort of convinced myself that I was worth it and that the people that I was dealing with needed to step up and give me the things that I was asking for. Because I've also run into that issue a lot where I asked for things and did not receive them, which like became a whole legal situation. However, yeah, that's sort of how I always justified when I was feeling like I was burdensome. I always justified it by saying like, this is my education and I'm the one that's suffering from not having these things, not anyone else. So that's kind of how I advocate for myself, I guess.
Yeah. But I think it's been proven psychologically, it's a psychological thing that there's always this there's someone worse than me idea that people will try and use to say that you don't deserve things. But the fact of the matter is that no matter what people think accommodations are, they are there to remove the advantage everyone else has. And they're personal for a reason. Because you do hear a lot that for some people think that accommodations are a privilege and that they're making things easier for you, but that's just not true. And I guess when we look at higher ed and we talk about not fitting the mold, we always have to remember that mold is an able cis straight white man. So
Yeah.
how many people were fitting in there anyway?
So this is Lisette, like related to what you just said, Linda, and connected to what everyone else has shared. Like, we also have to consider neoliberalism, and I hate to like throw in that abstract, start throwing theory into everything. But you know, neoliberal higher education views people as commodities and things that produce. And so being disabled, plus then you throw on gender and race, is just makes it everything so much more complicated. So I've been trying to process things through my writing. And so one of the things that I'm hoping will get published is related to what Ariana was saying in terms of the intersection of Latino culture and neoliberal ableism. And so what I call it is the narrative of sacrificio. So this idea that neoliberalism plus our cultural identities, especially the Latino culture, this idea that sacrificing is what we should be doing, and how we perpetuate that in the academy by talking about how tired we are and how much we work and comparing each other, how much we're getting done, and oh, I have like 50 projects and I was up until 3, or you know, things like that. And how we need to kind of push back against that. And so I do think we need more of us in the academy to kind of push and confront and highlight these narratives of sacrifice that the academy keeps trying to make us embrace as something that we should be doing. When in reality, it's even hurting I put it in quotes, able people, because it's not healthy. It's just not a healthy way to live. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I add 2 more cents.
Sure.
I love the idea of neoliberalism, and I also think of it in this frame of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we see Latinx, we see Black, because it is on the surface. You see it, and then you like, okay, there's a whole bunch of white people. We need to fix this. So here's diversity, equity, and inclusion coming to include the people you find acceptable to include, the strong, the able. Like, even though disability is there, it feels like an add-on. Like, it doesn't feel like something that's valued. And in reading this remarkable paper about Black feminist disability framework, I found out that Kimberly Crenshaw's envisionment of like intersectionality and the establishment of the ADA in the United States, they're 1 year apart, just one. So learning that, it's almost like, wow, they're like intimately together, ADA in 1990 and intersectionality in 1991. Like, I feel like if our higher education system really wants to say that disability is something that they value, and I hope that one day we can push that and make it be seen, because like that hashtag of my disability made me good at, like, I think it crushes ableism. Like, literally, it shows that disability isn't just some liability, but capabilities to really overcome life's challenges. And with COVID-19, like, there are going to be some life challenges. Those who are able to recover from COVID-19 will go through. Like, I'm now using those air quotes too, because disability isn't something that just happens at birth. Like, it might have happened to Stacy, but to most of us here who acquired disability later, the disability community can be a supportive community to those who are entering the disability journey, those who are going through the nightmare of like diagnosis. Like, I mean, sometimes that needs support. And since nobody's talking about it, nobody knows we're here to support them. And since nobody seems to appreciate people with disabilities in higher ed, there are no programs, no scholarships, no, like, here's a program to help you prepare for grad school for disabled people. Like, I mean, I just got a message like from someone that saw like the post about like National Coming Out Day and the disabled roll call and be like, how do I talk about disabilities in my personal statement without it becoming like a kiss of death? Like, the fact that we can phrase disabilities as kiss of death, like, it's really flipping sad. Because it's like the death of moving forward, mostly because these percentages are so low. I'm wondering if it's more likely for some other random super rare thing to happen than to make it in higher ed as a person with disabilities. So yeah, we really need to start as a higher education system creating this infrastructure that values disability, that doesn't just go, well, okay, you're here, I guess we'll do something. We'll like just see you through the medical model and we'll just give you some accommodations and maybe we'll make things a little bit more accessible for you so you can somewhat survive, but we don't really see you making it anywhere else. So all those programs we give every other person we see within the diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, what they have, you won't have it. You won't have community centers. You won't have programs. You won't have scholarships. You won't have programs to prepare you because we're just surprised you're here. So
Yeah, it's
good luck.
A really good point about like external factors that drive diversity, because like I know what something that really frustrates me is when we think of diversity and it just becomes these boxes that we can check off. And disability isn't always like that simple, right? I mean, we've just heard I don't even know how many people are on this call, 5 different perspectives and 5 different ways that people are thinking about this, and so of 5 different people. So it's not as easy as just checking a box. And I think you're totally right in that this is institutional changes. This is not just like, I've done quite a lot of advocacy work at the undergrad institution that I did. And this is not just about administrative change on the level of one institution. This is administrative change like in higher education broadly. And I know that's a huge thing to ask for, but truly, I think that's the only way you're going to see is institutional change of how we're thinking about who belongs in these spaces and the stories that are appropriate and the stories that should be told and how they're being told in those spaces, basically.
Absolutely. And definitely, I think one thing that would need to change is something that Lisa mentioned earlier, and that is that even a lot of the times they feel that they are legally required to provide accommodation to students, and then they just all disappear when you graduate, and they just pretend that disabilities don't exist. And it's partly the reason why there are so few people with disabilities in higher ed, and also why most of them, if they can at all, don't get any accommodations, because they feel like if they ask for them, their contracts won't be renewed, or they'll be seen as lazy, or even if they ask for them, they'll just say no. So they just don't bother. So I guess, do you want to talk a bit about that? Because you, Lisa, because you have experience with that.
Yeah, it is challenging. I think what I think related to what Stacey was saying in terms of changing higher education to embrace disability, I think sadly it's starting to happen now, at least in terms of like there's been some creation of disability cultural centers at some institutions. And I know recently the Spencer Foundation is now looking to provide grants on disability and supporting disabled scholars. There was also, I think the Ford Foundation was recently looking for a program officer to focus solely on disability. So I think change is coming. I don't know how quickly it'll happen. My bud Leroy Moore would probably say it's never gonna come. I don't know, Sarita, do you know Leroy?
Okay. I am definitely
he's a black disabled activist, and I love him because he's so real. And he's one of our I would say elders in the disability community. He's been speaking out about this since like the 80s, and he's just an amazing guy. But just I think disability is getting more visibility, but then I think also I think it's going to take a while though for that intersection. So for example, my organization that we co-founded in 2015, the National Coalition of Latinx with Disabilities, I think we're the first national organization to try to bridge the Latino community and the disability community and have a conversation of what does it mean to be a disabled Latinx person in this country. And like Ariana had mentioned, in the Latino community, disability is something that you ignore, minimize, pray away. If you have relatives with disabilities, especially visible disabilities, you don't really talk about them. Or when you do talk about them, it's kind of patronizing. And so it's like, I think it'll be a while for us to hold conversations in the Latino community where people will start to embrace the social model, because right now it's very much stuck in the medical model. And so building, what does that mean? What does disabled Latinx mean is gonna take a while for us. And I'm sure as Sarita sees something similar in the Black community as well. And Leroy talks all about it. So you need to check out what Leroy says.
Find me and share him with me.
Yes, I love him because he's just so real. But I think it's gonna take us and making connections with elders that are still with us, to have that generational conversation of what does it mean to be disabled, but also, making those connections to the intersections. So talking BIPOC, talking to queer communities, because I know especially online and in the disability justice arena, our queer BIPOC folks are leading the way. So we gotta give them props.
Yeah, like all that is absolutely great, and it's fantastic. It's always fantastic when we see any bit sort of disability and visibility. We're all kind of rushing towards it. But I guess talking from obviously a European perspective, some countries don't even have the protections, which I know are not, even though they're in the ADA, they're not always given. Many people have told me this, but a lot of countries don't have any real protections, which is a big problem. Or they're very vague, and it is a thing. But one thing I've noticed, I think that COVID has brought up, is some university departments that I've been in touch with in Europe anyway, got a shock when they found out how many professors they had that were actually disabled that they didn't know about.
Wow.
Because when we had lockdown, they were all like, I can't come back to work. I have this thing. I need to work from home. They got a massive shock. And I've spoken to several, and they're all like, oh, damn, we need to do something here. So at least they got to kick up the ass about getting some framework in place. So that is something good that's come out of COVID.
Yay! And I think another good thing that's come out of COVID is, I feel like my university is more open to the, I think self-advocacy. I'm really expanding it to casting visions for my campus and the University of California, because there will be more people with disabilities. Because no matter how you're reporting, disabilities, as we go through this COVID crisis, as people recover to actually deal with chronic disabilities, you need to really start by honoring the people with disabilities currently in your institution and supporting them more, to be able to increase your capacity to really support people after they're dealing with COVID. Because for my institution, I don't know if your institutions are similar, so we have this program called Ready to Learn here at UCSD. So it goes through how to protect yourself, wear your mask, go get tested. We have this many quarantine dorms, this many isolation dorms. And then there's this weird thing that happens. Nothing. There's nothing about what to do if you recover and you are disabled. How do we go about this? What does disabled life look like? Here's a support group. Nothing. I met with my counseling and psychological services, the leadership of this, and I'm literally teaching them about the grief journey in disabilities, because grief is not just someone died. A piece of me died that I knew as healthy, able, didn't have to think about how many spoons I had to go about my day, didn't really have to learn what happens when I hit the wall where the spoons are gone. I hit that wall because that's my internalized ableism. Oh yeah, I'm just going to try surfing. This is not going to be that bad. Kiss of death.
For 5 days.
But I mean, we have to really just do better. It's critical in this time of COVID, while everything is closed, to open your mind to disabilities as higher education system. Because
I think that leads really on really well to the last question that I had, which is that mental health is more than just mental health disabilities. And I know in Disabled in Higher Ed, we're talking about that today, which will be weeks ago when we air this. And it's that minority stress also happens to every minority group, but disabilities, which has only been researched in the past few years, or the model has only been applied to disabilities in the past few years. And self-advocacy is something that is massively energy draining. So if you were to give one tip to people about self-care and conserving your mental health during self-advocacy, what would it be?
It's a hard question.
It is a hard question.
I could try to start, and then other people could try on this question too. So, self-advocacy and self-care together. My, self-advocacy is a lot of spoons. Because sometimes it's just frustrating when you feel yourself hitting the walls of, will you understand and hear me? Like, trying to self-advocate to the Vice Chancellor of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion here at UCSD about why don't we have programs. I literally break down crying in front of her about the inequities in our diversity statements. And she's like, let me contact some people to help you with your personal statements. I'm like, you really didn't hear my statement, did you? As a community, we have nothing. You think it's helping me is going to really be what makes me feel better? No. So I'll end up going into that on the Crip Camp panel, which will be weeks ago from them. But I think what really helps to make like my self-care and self-advocacy is empowering others to self-advocate with me, to self-advocate as a community toward one common goal, so that it's not just your energy expense, it's not just your mental health, it's you having a support system around you, a community around you, and making that community yourself. Like that's what I had to do at UCSD, and I finally am starting to see a community a year into being here at UCSD and feeling alone and disregarded by my Black Student Union. Like when they're making demands of the faculty about after all of everything happened around Black Lives Matter, I tried to say something about disability and it's like, whatever next. I just felt disregarded. And it's having those people that you can talk to openly, honestly, and really come together and realize this one aspect needs to be improved. How can we do this? It's not just about it's about me, because the problems that many of us deal with as a disability community are common and go beyond us. It goes beyond our experience. It's into who we are as BIPOC communities, who we are as LGBTQ communities, being bisexual as well, who we are as religious communities, being Christian as well. So I'm oil and water. That's how I call myself, because the bisexual does not fit very well into the Christian part. So, and being Black and disabled is like oil and water again, because they don't fit together well either. And it's about finding ways that you can advocate, but have support as you advocate. And then I also recently submitted a paper to Disability in Society on the compounded burden of being Black and disabled during the age of COVID-19. That really calls for that higher education change, calls for programs, calls for living and learning communities. And I'll be like a month out from hearing something on November 30th on like the paper. So throw some good thoughts at my first paper. But like, I feel like the more we publish as a disabled community about our challenges and we're open about them, the more we can really catalyze a change into higher education that goes beyond where we are now to where we all are together, so that it can really be disseminated, cited by each other, shared by each other, to go into the abled communities, to really see us as something beyond the problems that the accommodations and the accessibility, like, that they think are fixed. Our problems are not fixed in accommodations and accessibility. We're just on the same level with you, those who are able. And I call on the higher education system just to see us truly and to see our capabilities and not to see are liabilities. So don't self-advocate alone. That's my tip.
I would
Yeah,
love
so-
to build on that a little bit.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Just because you mentioned like seeing us as just the accommodations to fix the problem, and I actually think COVID-19 is a great opportunity to start to reframe the way that we're thinking about that a little bit. Just because when we offer things on online platforms, we actually open a lot of doors to make things more accessible in ways that are quite, I don't want to say easy, but like very straightforward, and actually makes it so that the material that is being offered is already accessible, as opposed to trying to take this material that is inaccessible and making it accessible for specific students. So for example, like being able to have live captioning on PowerPoints is a fairly easy thing to do that professors can just turn on, and then it's much more accessible for someone like me who's visually impaired. Like having the PowerPoint right in front of me on my computer, or having the whiteboard right in front of me on my computer, is something that's way easier than it has ever been before, because we're offering it online. And so I think like it's a great opportunity to rethink how we offer these materials, and to consider accessibility before we even start to create them, because that will also open doors in terms of having us like making it accessible and it not having to be such a challenge for students to get accommodations. And then in terms of self-care and advocating, the actual question, sorry.
You're fine.
I agree in terms of like finding a community. For me, I was really lucky. I had a really strong community of friends when I was in my undergrad and advocating for myself. But I also think finding advisors and people already in higher education who are in your corner and who are willing to go to bat for you is something that I've found to be really, really helpful, because it makes me just feel like validated in that, okay, I'm not crazy. Like this experience was outrageous. I'm really like, and just to be able to talk to those people who have been through it and who are in higher education and who are willing to, who you know is standing in your corner. So that's been very helpful for me. And yeah, sorry.
No, I think it's all super important stuff to say. Like it needs to be said.
If Ariana's okay, could I say something?
Go
Okay.
ahead.
And then you, okay, thank you.
I'll go
Ariana.
next.
I didn't want to be like jumping in.
No, don't worry, you're good.
So related to what both Sarita and Stacy were saying, it's really important to have a community, to have folks on your side. Something that my coalition does intentionally is that for every project or thing that we have to do as a coalition, we have 2 people on everything, so that when one person runs out of spoons, the other person is kind of like the backup support. So if you can find a way to do that in your daily life, having somebody to kind of like, hey, I got this, do you have this? And kind of like supporting each other that way, that's really extremely helpful. And then in terms of self-care, I would say, you know, listen to your body. Like, I think a lot of us, especially when we get sucked into the academy and the culture, and we start being socialized to see things in a particular way, we kind of forget ourselves, and we forget our bodies and our backgrounds. And what I've been trying to be mindful about, and this is coming as a Buddhist, so coming as a Buddhist, I've been trying to be more intentional about how I do things, and listening to when my spoons are getting low, and even if something is due, being like, I just can't do it. Like, I need a nap. Like, I just, like, if my body says I need a nap, then I need a nap. Like, I can feel myself when my spoons are getting low. I can feel a shift in my mood. I can just feel like the fatigue setting in, and I know I just can't push anymore. And so just knowing where your limits are and being comfortable with saying no and being comfortable with making decisions that are right for you. So if that means you need to only work between 9 and 5, then so be it. Like, that's how I kind of see the world now. And I think disability has been a blessing for me in that way, because it's made me prioritize to the point where it's like, higher ed is not going to take care of me when I'm sick, if I am about to die. I mean, it's been very eye-opening, but also not surprising that there have been institutions telling their faculty, hey, in this time of COVID, make sure you have somebody, a backup person, to teach your course, and let us know who that person's going to be. So I am very real. I see the academy for what it is, and I know that they are not going to be at my bedside when I fall ill or if something happens to me. So it's on me and to make sure that I'm doing all I can to take care of me and my community.
Awesome.
Oh, okay, I'm next, right? Self-advocacy and self-care go hand in hand, but they also defy each other. I will elaborate on this. Self-advocacy, I tweeted this yesterday on World Mental Health Day, is exhausting. Like mentally exhausting, emotionally exhausting, physically exhausting, and it's just it's a bundle of like a lot of stuff. And you know, I was talking to Sarita about this the other day. We were DMing on Twitter. You know, advocating for yourself, even though it's all those things I just said, like all the spectrums of exhaustion, it's a form of self-care. Being assertive about yourself, even though it's difficult in the moment, is a form of self-care, because you deserve to put yourself first. You deserve to be healthy. You deserve to be happy. You are worthy of those things, even though, you know, institutionalized ableism and internalized ableism tell you that you shouldn't be those things. You're a liability. You are not like a quote unquote normal person. You deserve and you are worthy of those things. And I didn't really see it that way. I just saw as like, I have to do this because like no one else will. And I've kind of had to shift my mindset, like I said, throwing that sponge against the wall and be like, I'm worthy and I deserve these things. And, you know, other folks in the disabled community do too, like everybody does. And so, yeah, it's exhausting, and but it is a form of self-care. And I think, you know, at the same time though, you have to learn a balance. And as Lizette said, you need to listen to your body and listen to your signals. If you're tired, like, it's okay to just take a step back and rest, because you are also worthy of rest. And especially in higher education, people work all the time, you know, lack of sleep and overworking. I say this about STEM, but it's, you know, for higher ed in general, they're worn like badges of honor. It's a very cultural thing in higher ed. And I've learned like higher ed wasn't built for us. I know it's kind of blunt to say, but it is built on a colonial white cis male perspective, and like like it wasn't built for us. So why do we have to completely follow the culture and the foundation in which it was built? Like, no. And so, yeah, like you're worthy of rest. And like, I think I talked about this on Twitter the other day. Like, you know, there's days where I just have so much, sorry, pardon my language, shit to do. And like, if my body's telling me like, I can't do that right now, like I'm anxious, you know, all these things, like I need to take a step back and listen to my body. And I know it's like, it goes hand in hand because like the system won't really recognize that, and they'll say that as, oh, you're being lazy, oh, you're procrastinating. But I just want to tell you, like, whoever's here or will be listening to this in the near future, like, you're not lazy, you're not procrastinating. You're in a system that sees you that way, but you are not that way. And so, yeah, just I think main points just like balance. Like you don't have to go with the system that wasn't built for you and isn't going to help you unless you self-advocate for yourself. And I guess just some forms of self-care I found to be useful. I've been fidgeting with this little putty thing the whole time because it helps me with my anxiety. Like just things like that, like you know, going outside, getting some vitamin D. Like I do art. I take a nap. I have like lotion, but something that smells good that like soothes my anxiety and soothes whatever I'm feeling. Just things like that have just been really helpful. Even kind of stepping back from social media and from my like standpoint as like identifying as a Latinx, queer, disabled woman, like it's kind of hard to like avoid everything, but I've learned like it's okay to just take a little step back and like still, you know, stay informed and still, you know, be on top of everything, but just, you know, take a step back and, you know, focus on yourself. Like it's like I know a lot of people view the word selfish as like a negative term, but when I say like be selfish, like that's a good word to use. Like it's okay to focus on yourself. Like it's a good word. A lot of people are like, that's a bad word. I'm like, no, when I'm like saying like to be selfish, like focus on yourself, like that's a good thing. Like we're saying like it's a bad thing. Like, no, it's not. And I'm sorry, I went on a tangent, but like this is something I'm super passionate about. And yeah, so I think that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Amazing.
I just want to add one last thing. Like, I think it's not about being selfish as a person with disabilities when we do take that moment to take that midday nap, which just feels so awesome when you listen to your body and actually do it. But being selfish sometimes as a person with disabilities is not selfish, it's selfless. It's honoring yourself, honoring your disability, denying the undertones of internalized ableism, institutionalized ableism. You don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to overachieve to show you're worthy to be here, because you are worthy. You are meant to be here. We as people with disabilities and the intersections that we live at, we add so much more to higher education. We add perspectives that aren't currently here. So I really want all of us to feel strong enough to really selflessly fight for ourselves, to be here, to be seen, to be amplified, and to be empowered within higher education. Because the higher education is not just for the abled, it's for all of us. And never forget that.
That is so awesome. And I know we've gone slightly over time, so I apologize for that, but I didn't want to stop anyone talking because everyone had awesome things to say. So I want to thank you all so much for being here today and for sharing so openly. Thank you so much. And I guess that's the end. So bye-bye.